This is 5 on your side at 4. Focused on you.
Right now, a Metro East library leader is under investigation. A top staff member resigned from the East St. Louis Public Library system just within the past 2 weeks. Thanks for being here at 4. I'm Kay Quinn. Brent Solomon has the night off. 5 on your side's Justina Coronel has been digging for more details. She joins us in studio with more. Justina.
Okay, this is involving a top staff member within the East St. Louis Public Library, and they resigned this month. Now, this person has not been formally charged with a crime, and that's why we are not naming them. Now, a leader in the library system told me this staff member is being investigated by both the library board and the FBI. They're accused of embezzling $89,000 from December 2023 to March this year. Now, this money is meant to be used for library purposes, and this staff member is accused of using this money for personal use. I'm told library leadership plans to make some changes. Earlier today, I spoke to former Mayor Robert Eastern, who's an East St. Louis native. He said, as a longtime official and a taxpayer, it's alarming to hear these allegations.
It makes you want to look at these things again and try to figure out where's the disconnect, what happened. We're the city of champions, and this is not things that champions do.
Now, I did reach out to the resigned staff member and multiple local leaders for an interview, but have not heard back. I just got off the phone about an hour ago with East St. Louis Councilmember Joanne Parks, who is heartbroken by the news and said this unfortunate situation gives them a black eye.
All right, thank you, Justina. Hours ago, Jacob Adler pleaded guilty to leaving the scene after hitting and killing a teenager with his car. The 27-year-old was involved in a hit and run that killed 17-year-old Matthew Nicolai in 2022. It happened on Chippewa near the Ted Drews. Court documents say surveillance video showed Adler leaving the scene of the accident. Authorities also say Adler took his truck to a repair shop the day after. In exchange for the plea deal, Adler was sentenced to 5 years for leaving the scene and 4 years for tampering with evidence. He will serve both sentences at the same time. This morning, St. Louis police were on the scene of 3 smash and grabs on South Grand. SLMPD tells 5 on your side that Poke 1, Mukabe's, and Got Ham and Eggs were all hit. Right now, police are investigating each break-in individually. Money was stolen from at least one of those businesses. Cloudy and warm this afternoon, but there's a chance some of us could see rain for the start of the weekend. Chief Meteorologist Scott Connell here now with the Weather First forecast. Scott?
Well, Kay, right now it is dry in St. Louis, and we just have the clouds around the area and even some sunshine filtering through those clouds right now. So you're not going to see any imminent rain around the metro area. Your evening plans are just fine around St. Louis. Our Doppler radar showing some rain on the radar screen to the north of St. Louis, but most of this is not reaching the ground. We've had a few sprinkles up around the Quincy-Hannibal area, but outside of a stray sprinkle, we're not going to see any rain out of what's moving through right now, just mainly cloud cover. We're watching the area here back to our north and west across Iowa, northwest Missouri, northeastern portions of Kansas for additional development. That should happen during the overnight hours into early tomorrow morning. So after about 2 or 3 in the morning, our chance for showers and thunderstorms will increase. And as you plan your Saturday, we're looking at the impacts from that rain happening through the morning hours and then decreasing chances of rain as we head towards lunchtime into the afternoon. There still could be some thunderstorms tomorrow evening, especially south and east of St. Louis, and it's going to be steamy tomorrow. We go back into the lower 90s, and with the humidity levels increasing, especially southwest of St. Louis, which is the area that most likely doesn't see a lot of morning rainfall, we're talking Rolla over towards Steelville, Farmington to Cape Girardeau, down to Perryville. We do have a heat advisory for tomorrow afternoon, early tomorrow evening. Those heat index values around 105. The impacts there, of course, on your body. So make sure you're staying hydrated and not overexerting yourself with any strenuous activity. We'll see in a few minutes, Kay. We'll break down the rest of the weekend.
All right, thank you, Scott. The Supreme Court released multiple decisions today. One of the rulings upholds a law that criminalizes homeless encampments on public property. In a 6-3 ruling, the conservative majority court sided with the town of Grants Pass, Oregon. The case has been closely watched by communities across the country, including St. Louis. Last year, multiple board bills were considered addressing homelessness in St. Louis.
Let me first be clear that just because the Supreme Court has ruled that municipalities have the ability to criminalize people who are unhoused, that does not mean that the city of St. Louis will move forward in criminalizing our unhoused population.
An unhoused Bill of Rights and a plan to open homeless shelters failed to be approved by the board last year. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development says there are more than 650,000 homeless people all across the country. Today, the Supreme Court handed down a ruling that will make it more difficult to charge January 6th Capitol Hill riot defendants with obstruction. NBC's Alice Barr in Washington with more on how the court's decision could upend hundreds of January 6 cases, including former President Trump's.
Hi there. The Supreme Court today siding with a January 6 Capitol rioter in a decision that could benefit former President Trump. The defendant, also a former Pennsylvania police officer, seeking to have one of the charges against him thrown out, obstruction of an official proceeding. In a 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court agreed that that obstruction charge should be more narrowly used, saying it was only intended to apply in limited circumstances involving tampering with physical evidence. The Department of Justice has been pointing to a broader provision in the charge for conduct that corruptly obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding. The justices have now sent the case back down to a lower court to determine whether the Justice Department can still prosecute the defendant under the narrowed interpretation, a decision made far more consequential by the fact that former President Trump has been charged with violating the same law. So this ruling could upend his prosecution and hundreds of others charged in connection with the Capitol attack, though other charges against this defendant and also former President Trump and others related to the January 6 attack would still stand. In Washington, I'm Alice Barr. Back to you.
The Supreme Court also released a decision yesterday that could have implications for a corruption case in Illinois. In a 6-3 decision, justices narrowed the scope of federal bribery rules. The ruling sided with an Indiana mayor and centers around the definition of gratuity versus bribe, which could mean charges against former Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan could be amended.
This is not great in a time where we have low government trust to cut back on the ability to prosecute government corruption. What they're saying is if they give you the money after you do the thing, then that's okay. If they give you the money before the thing, then that's a bribe.
We have much more legal analysis on the latest Supreme Court decisions on this week's episode of The Record. Tune in Sunday night after Sports Plus. A rough morning after for President Biden, how he's explaining his performance at last night's debate. St. Louis Public Schools consider going outside the lines to solve the bus driver shortage, the proposal that could mean changes to your child's day, school day. More than 1,000 athletes dancing in the streets in Minneapolis. How they got the party started ahead of the U.S. gymnastics Olympic trials this weekend.